Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Gimp scroll creation tutorial. Okay, we ended up in part 1 where we saved our Gimp file. I believe it's XFS or something like that. So anyway, I'm here in the folder uh, where I saved it. So if you have your file saved somewhere, all you really need to do is go to that file and double click it, and then that will begin to open up Gimp, and we can pick up where we left off the last time. As you can see, there's a splash screen there that was part of Gimp Paint Studio. Okay, now I believe we want to go to this layer here, and we're going to go ahead and begin to add a little bit more texture and depth to that. And we could do it on these back layers, but there's not much visible on these back layers. You can mess with it, but it may not be necessary. So anyway, let's go ahead and before I start using my burn tool and dodge tool on this and creating some more depth and texture, in case I make a mistake or there's something on there I don't like, I'm just going to duplicate this layer. So the layer that you have, which is our main layer here, I'm just going to go down at the bottom of the layer dialog and just click on duplicate layer. I'm just going to go here and I'm going to grab my dodge and burn tool, and I'm going to switch over to burn, and I'm going to use the mid-tones. I'm going to crank my opacity down quite a bit. We can crank it back up if it's not working like we want it to. And on the brush, you can experiment with some different brushes, but as usual, I always like to start with a fuzzy or a very soft brush. So I'm just going to begin to darken some of these areas here, and I think that brush is, for some reason, it's just still, to me, is too hard. So I don't know if we got anything that's going to be soft enough, so we may change our opacity. We could have also painted in some our shadows using the burn tool. You can see we're starting to add a little texture and a little depth in there, and I'm going to show you another trick. If you get it too dark like this, I'm going to show you another trick here in just a little bit. So yeah, just since you've created a duplicate of your other layer, just feel free to go nuts on this layer and just experiment, and then you can just delete that layer if you want. If you think it looks like garbage, then you can just delete it and do some other things. And also a little bit later in the video, I'll show you how to paint in a stain. So anyway, I'm going to burn these edges just a little bit here. Just kind of rough it up. Don't want to be too uniform here, so it looks a little more random. Okay, so now I can use my erase tool with a very soft brush and a low opacity, very low, And I can go in here to those areas that I got too dark, I don't like, and just begin to erase. And all you're erasing is that duplicated layer. Now the layer below it is still showing, so you're not really losing anything. So you could even use your smudge tool just a bit here if some of those edges are too hard. Okay, let's go ahead and paint in a stain, I think. Pardon me. So I'm going to take a brush here, a nice soft brush. Of course, once again, turn my opacity down. And maybe I want to use this cloud brush. And I believe that's one that is included in Gimp Paint Studio. Or the Chaos and Evolutions, but I think it's Gimp Paint Studio. I think it's included in that. So I'm just going to crank up my size here a bit. I'm just going to click in here, just click a little bit and start to darken that up. Actually, I tell you what, let's create that on another new layer. So the layer we just were using the burn tool on, I'm going to have that selected, and then I'm going to click new layer, say OK. So if we make a mistake, we can just delete that layer. So just going to lightly click around in here. And then I'm going to go to my eraser, decrease my brush size, make sure my opacity's down, and I'm just going to click in the center of that stain we just created, and just begin to lightly erase the inside of it. And there's a pretty nice stain, but I don't like the way it looks just quite yet. So I'm going to grab my smudge tool, and I'm going to grab one of these other, let's see, we'll grab our grainy blender smudge. Make sure my opacity's down. Decrease my brush size. Let me grab it here a little faster. And I'm just going to go along the inside here and just going to begin to smudge that a bit. I think my opacity needs to be turned up just a bit. Maybe a little bit more, or maybe we need to change our there it goes. So anyway, that's kind of a smudge, and maybe turn down the opacity on it. If I wanted to, I also could take my brush in here, and if I wanted to kind of make it look like maybe a water stain, I would just kind of drag out where maybe it had ran down. Decrease my brush size a little bit. There we go. There's kind of a water stain. Maybe take my eraser brush and kind of erase a little bit of it. There we go. That's a little better. Smudge tool, kind of make that not quite so dark. Give it a little shape there. There we go. That looks fine. Okay, let's see here. Let's go back and clean this up some more, and I'm going to do that using my smudge tool, I think. The one that we already have selected. And get rid of some of these paint lines. Have some obvious ones there. And later on, actually, no, I think we'll do it right now. I think, for the sake of getting the time down on this video, I think we're going to leave this like this for now. And we're just going to go ahead and now, I'll tell you what, we got one more thing we need to do. So now I'm going to take my eraser brush, and remember I told you we wanted to tear and rip and tatter these edges of this paper some. So I'll tell you what, let's grab this layer with the extra textures on it here, and let's just merge that down with the one below. Then let's turn our background layer. No, let's not turn our background layer off. Let's hide all the rolls back there. And then on this layer here, let's grab our eraser and grab a really hard edge brush. Maybe a shape like this, and let's just begin to go in here and turn up your opacity all the way and just begin to erase some of these edges here. And we'll use a couple of different brushes to kind of give that a little bit more of a random type shape. Okay, let's go in here and let's just grab a just a hard round brush and just kind of go in with some of these edges here and kind of round some of those off so they're not quite so squared. To give it a little bit more of a, it looks like it actually has been torn up. So, and I think that's good enough on that. One more thing I do want to do while we're still on this layer. I think I want to go in here and use my burn tool, and kind of where these the parts we just erased, I kind of want to go in there with my burn tool and kind of burn around those edges. And what that'll do is kind of give it a look, kind of some of these areas where it kind of looks like it's been burnt actually, like it was in a fire, or there's some extra stains in there. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Maybe Turn some of these edges also just a little bit. You don't want to use too much opacity. Let's see, we're starting to get a little long here, so I'll tell you what, let's hide that layer and let's go ahead and bring these layers up and go ahead and grab our eraser tool again and our hard edge brush and kind of begin to see, got to make sure that layer is selected. Let's see, let's hide that layer, hide our stain layer. It's a good idea to name your layers. Is something that I didn't do, and I really should have. Okay, so this is the one, this is this one, so we're going to select that one and we'll just kind of erase some of those edges, kind of give it a torn up look. Let's go down to the next one, see which one that one is, and that one is that one. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we really need to get moving along here in this time. Okay. Go to the last one here. Kind of tear up those edges just a little bit. Could spend a little bit more time and use a couple of different brushes like we did initially on the top layer if you want. So I think we've got that part. You may want to go in and clean this up some more and add some more detail. But let's go ahead and hide our background layer, and then I'm going to go to the very top layer here and I'm going to merge the visible, and then I'm going to right click and go alpha to selection, and then I'm going to create a new layer above that and say OK. And then I'm going to go to my bucket fill tool, and this time I'm going to choose a pattern fill, and I'm looking for a texture on here that is called paper. And then I'm just going to fill that new layer with that paper texture. And then I'm going to go change my layer mode to overlay. And that really, I really like that effect. And if it looks like it's a little too much to you, you can always drag down the opacity, and you can also if it's too strong in some areas, let's say maybe on top of your stain, you can take your eraser tool with a low opacity and a very soft brush and just erase a little bit of that texture very lightly, so maybe your stain is a little more prevalent or shows a little bit more. So I think that looks pretty good, so we're going to leave it that way, and I'm just going to go ahead and with my background layer hidden, I'm just going to go ahead and merge all both of those layers again, deselect, turn my background layer back on, and now it's time to go ahead and create our handles. So I'm going to go to the rectangle tool here, and I'm just going to pull out a rectangle selection, and probably about this far, and I think that looks good. And I'm going to choose a I'll tell you what, let's fill this, go to the bucket fill tool, and let's choose a wood texture, and I don't remember which one it was. I think it's this wood number 2 pattern, and I want to create a new layer for that. And actually this layer will need to be below that layer here in a little bit, but so we can see it, we'll just keep it on top, and that's the right texture. That's kind of, it is a wood texture, but it doesn't look the way I really want it to. So I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to go to my filters. I'm going to go to noise, HSV noise. I'm going to crank up my value pretty good there to maybe 91. I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to go to filters. I'm going to go to blur and then motion blur. Pardon me for the cough. And I'm going to turn my angle down to 0. And then I'm going to crank up the length a little bit and say OK. And there, that gives us kind of a little bit of a wood texture. And then we'll just go ahead and merge that down. And then let's go ahead and drop this in behind. Move this. We're going to move this layer on top. So I'm just going to click and I'm going to drag it up. Well, that didn't work. So I'm going to use my arrow keys at the bottom. So our dowel rod, or whatever you want to call it, is on bottom there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint in some shadows on top of that. So I'm going to go, we still have it selected so we can keep our shadows restricted inside that selection. Brush tool, a nice dark color, fairly low opacity. I'm just going to paint in the shadows there. It's very, just keep going till it kind of looks like the way I want it to. Doesn't need a huge shadow, but it will need to be fairly dark because it is way back there. Okay, I'm going to deselect that. Wow, for some reason we ended up painting on top of, wow, painted on top of the wrong layer, didn't I? So we're going to move that up again. Make sure you have this layer selected. I was accidentally painting on the other layer, so that looked like garbage. So now we can start to paint in there. Make sure you have the correct layer selected before you start painting. Okay, we'll start getting a shadow in there. Okay, and that'll work for that part. You know what? While that's selected, I'm gonna create a new layer on top of that and say OK. And let's hide this. And we just, let's see, created a new layer on top of that layer. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my gradient tool and I'm going to scroll down till I find, let's see here, a gradient that is called, I believe it's rounded edge. Yeah, rounded edge. And then I'm just going to fill that with that gradient till it looks right. Nope. There we go. So you want to fill that with that gradient about like this on top of that last layer. And then you can take this layer and convert it to an overlay. And that gives a little bit of roundness to that dowel rod there. I'm going to hide my background layer and make sure this layer is hidden also. And then I'm just going to merge that layer down. And I'd like for this wood texture on here to be a little darker, so I'm going to go to my colors. I'm just going to grab the curves. Just going to grab about here, and I'm just going to pull it down just a bit. And I think that's dark enough. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to deselect that. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer on top of that. And create a use my rectangle selection tool and create a selection here. And I want to add to that selection, so I'm going to hold my shift key and I'm going to grab a selection about like this. I'm going to bring that in just a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and fill that with my texture. And then I'm going to grab a circle selection. Just going to drag that circle out here, and I'm going to drag it right on top of that. I'll tell you what, this back selection here I think was a little bit wide. I think I want it about like that. Hold shift key, and that way it adds to that selection. Then I'm going to grab my circle selection, hold the shift key again, and drag out this. Let's go ahead and fill that first. Fill that, and then go back to my circle selection, drag out kind of a shape, something like this. Go to my fill tool and fill that in. Deselect, and you can see where we're starting to get our little handle shape here, and maybe want to move this back just a little bit, and maybe we need to scale it up a little bit, I think. So maybe move it down. I think it needs to be scaled up just a little bit more. Now maybe move it down. I'm trying to cover that up, so let's just go alpha to selection this time, and then grab our scale tool. Scale that up just a bit. There we go. Now we can use our move tool and move it down so it covers that up. Okay, now let's deselect it. And let's go in here with our paintbrush. With that selected, we have a floating layer here, so we need to go down here and anchor that. And then we'll go alpha to selection. And let's go ahead and scroll in here a bit. And what is going on here? Okay, move that down. And what I want to do, let's see, is I want to make sure that I'm going to start painting in some highlights. Is what I'm going to do. Make sure I have a white selected here. And go with a much smaller brush. And just begin to, let's see, let's turn our opacity up. Just put a little bit of a highlight in here. Maybe a little bit of one there. Turn the size of our brush up. And just kind of a little bit of highlight in here. Now I want to use my smudge tool and just kind of smudge those highlights just a little bit to kind of blend them in there. I'm probably going to need to turn the opacity down on that layer. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. Not exactly the way I wanted it to look, but so let's go ahead and merge that layer down. But the video is starting to run a little bit long. So, and now I think I want to darken that up. So I'm going to go our curves again and just darken that so it matches a little bit more the other wood texture we have there. Say OK and deselect that. So now I'm going to merge. Let's see. Now I think we're going to grab our rod there, and let's just duplicate that layer. And we'll grab our move tool, move that down here, and then we'll grab the handle and we'll duplicate that layer, use our move tool and move that down into place. And then let's see here, let's merge that down. We just merged those two handles down, and then let's go alpha to selection, and then let's go to layer, transform, and flip it horizontally, and then we can use our move tool and drag those out. So what did I do here? Oh, I've got to duplicate that first. Duplicate, and then layer, transform, flip horizontally. Then we can use our move tool to move those into place. Deselect. And basically that's going to be about it for this tutorial. We could go in there and add some more details, and we could go in here and just merge all visible layers with our background layer hidden. And that's gonna be about it. My phone is ringing, so I've got to go answer that. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and so go ahead and leave a comment. Be sure to like this video, and also be sure to subscribe. Have a great day.